If a Green Lantern ring flew into the Sharp Tank, who would it seek out? Would Bobby Blunt be better suited for an indigo or violet ring? And just how much more powerful could Psycho Paradelic be with a yellow ring of fear? After getting into a conversation with some fellow fans, and it was in the comments section of a Beware video, well, it dawned on me that I wanted to try my hand at doing PopCross Studios characters as lanterns, and this video is the result. So leave a like if you want and subscribe if you feel like, then strap yourselves in for a wild ride through the emotional spectrum throughout the PopCross canons. In today's video, we'll be focusing on the red and orange lantern cores. But before we get in too deep, we should first establish some ground rules for this series. We'll be determining lantern eligibility based on a few factors. The first one being fairly obvious is how well does a character fit into the archetype of a particular ring. That being said, we will only use a character as they are in their last major appearance within the series. Dead characters are fair game, but if a character has gone through a significant amount of development that would push them beyond their ideal placement for a particular ring, they will be disqualified for it. For example, Arava, known as Sphere herself in her introduction, would have been a perfect candidate for the Yellow Lantern course, given her use of fear to force people to improve their lives or die in their inability to push past it. After Fear of the Demon Hunters, however, Arava is a much more compassionate individual who has moved on from using fear to force people to change. Thus, it's hard for me to justify her as a Yellow Lantern in the current state of the series. Additionally, some characters may qualify for several rings, in which case, unless there is enough justification for them to potentially be a White Lantern, we'll be placing them into the core that they may fit into best out of their available options. One extra note, there are a lot of characters across the PopCross Studios canons, but we will only be looking at the original characters for the sake of these lists. That being said, screen time and pre-existing artwork, or at the very least a description of the character's appearance, will play a big part in who gets chosen. Even then, I likely won't be covering every single potential Lantern candidate. I try to put in honorable mentions here and there as they might be needed, but I'm doing art for every single pick. So you're going to have to bear with me when I leave out a lot of potential Green Lantern candidates. I've already decided on doing 2 Green Lantern episodes just to cover the Eldritch Multiverse and the Secondary Multiverse in their own videos, and even then, there are still more candidates for both. So yeah, not everyone will be making it in. I'm sorry, but I'm a college student and I have plenty of other projects going on besides this one, so I just don't have that kind of time. Also, I don't particularly want to get incredibly tired of the color green. And I like green, it's one of my favorite colors, people. With all that being said, let's get into our Red Lanterns, shall we? Red Lanterns are fueled by the red light of rage. Driven by anger, they live for destruction, though not always for destruction's sake. When a person dons a red ring, their blood turns to boiling hot plasma, which fuels their rage further. Most Red Lanterns are blinded by their anger and hatred, becoming more animalistic, but others, like their leader, Atrocitus, maintain a level of control over that rage, likely due to internal willpower to help focus it. Because of what happens upon donning the ring, however, removing it will kill them instantly, unless a Blue Lantern of Hope is there to heal them. There really aren't many candidates for Red Lanterns across the PopCross multiverses, so for that reason, this corpse currently consists of only one character, hence why we're doing the Red and Orange Lanterns together rather than in separate videos. As for that character, if you've watched or read Fear of the Demon Hunters, you should know exactly who that is. The snow-haired, unceasingly angry Clayton Costas. Yeah, we're starting off the series with a dead character, but for good reason. Clayton was one of the strongest members of the Predator Coalition of Demon Hunters. Armed with an angelic sword gifted him by the Archangel Capri, he fought demons with an unparalleled wrath. His aggression was felt off the field too, even around his allies within the Coalition, and would be the thing that would go on to drive Kushmara away from him. Clayton's rage was so great, even his soul gave up on trying to push past it. Without his dad, the only one he had thought had ever loved him, Clayton turned against the world, but focused his anger on demons, like his father's killer. But on that note, that in some ways made Clayton much worse. For those with demonic powers, like Mara and later Vivian, he refused to look for the potential good in them, seeing them only as demons, despite having souls and being good people. It made no difference to him. Demons were a threat upon humanity that had to be extinguished one way or another. If they ever lost control, it would be too big of a liability for them to be left alive. After being fired from the Coalition for that very mindset, Clayton tracked down Leviathan in an attempt to take him down, and potentially Viv and Arava along the way. After he died in the Demon General's domain, and Vivian attempted to save his life by turning him into a demon like herself, all that was still present was his rage. One so incredibly infectious that he may as well have been a Red Lantern power battery. Now imagine what would have happened had Clayton claimed a red ring before his demise to the King of Animal Demons. Not only would he have likely survived that encounter, it stands to reason he might also have won, not just against Leviathan, but against Vivian as well. He wouldn't have needed to have his form altered to become a demon of rage. Simply putting on the ring would have turned him into one on its own, but keeping his human form and weapon of choice, making him even more of a threat than he already was. Any semblance of control left in Costas, and any hope his soul might have had for things to get better, it all would have exploded along with his heart. There will be no more Clayton, just a powerhouse-level threat that would leave Dimension D667 in ruins. The orange light of greed is a corruptive one. Unlike Violet, where it is instead lust and care that power the light, greed is singular, obsessive, and paranoid. There is no true Orange Lantern core. Instead, there is only one, but from their constructs they can manifest phantasms of the ring's past wielders. Greed comes in many forms. Most often, it comes in a physical sense: wealth, land, a valuable resource, maybe even something more eccentric, like artworks, weapons, or music. But there are less conventional forms of greed as well. Amongst them, we can find those who crave the spotlight, going out of their way to attempt asserting their superiority over others, even if their attempts may come off as pathetic. A prime case for this, even if their placement could be perceived as a bit of a stretch, can be found in Yoichi Roku. Before joining the Super 8th program, Roku Yoichi was an aspiring soccer player who decided to join the military instead. When he got in, he demanded the gauntlet be made for his leg specifically, allowing him to kick around his blade rather than swing it like is the case for other soldiers. He had wanted a blue blade, but got purple instead, but he made use of his skills to great effect anyway. Roku's greed is very non-traditional. When Kaio rolled around into his squad, Roku very quickly made it clear that he intended to one-up Kaio at everything. More Q-Serax busted, better combat skills. It even seemed as though he may have had his eye on Toshiko at one point. If Kaio could do it, he could certainly do it better. And if Kaio had it, he intended to either take it or make it insignificant. All of this to Kaio's passive annoyance. Roku wasn't worth his time. Personally, I do believe Roku may have had some respect for Kaio somewhere, but refuses to show it out of pride. But what if he was granted an orange ring? Suddenly, the tables might turn. With the orange light of greed on his side, Roku's desire for glory would only increase, and he would become more willing to take less moral decisions to get what he wants. He would fight dirty, potentially attacking even his own squad mates when they got in his way, or simply to claim their victories for himself. And his sense of pride would likely only heighten as he strived to keep his image as strong as possible. Roku would be the best, even more so than he already had believed, and he would ensure that all the world knew it. Maybe with such a ring, he'd actually be worth Kaio's time. Someone would need to humble him after all, and with that kind of power and willingness to use it on others to further his status, Roku might become enough of a threat to justify being stopped. But greed will also drive those who embody it to paranoia. For such individuals, that can result in acts of cowardice, going back on their word to maintain the thing which they hoard, and for those who hoard control, they are perhaps the most despicable wielders of the orange light. I can think of no better example of such greed than the God Overseer herself, leader of the Imperium Pantheon, Scourge of Dimension M308, head of the O5 Council, Tarsa. Tarsa's greed is similarly non-traditional, but far more toxic and threatening than Roku could ever dream of being. Instead of wealth, Tarsa seeks to hoard control, and she isn't above taking dishonorable measures to get away with it either. In truth, Tarsa very well could have been a Yellow Lantern. She created monsters to force people into submission, killing rogue godbloods and their families, marking people who did not comply, even sending other gods into Yomi no Kuni, the Shinto underworld, where she convinced them into believing they were powerless prior to Horus coming to rescue them all. She exudes a sense of intimidation, and when she enters a scene, you know without a shadow of a doubt that things are about to go down. Above all else, she refuses to tolerate those who would oppose her. She even tried to create a god queller for the sole purpose of keeping other gods in line. Tarsa is incredibly ruthless and uncaring as well, making her a good pick for an Indigo Lantern, as those rings will seek out the least compassionate hosts possible to force them to care. Given how poorly she mistreated Astra, her own daughter, trying to turn her into a younger version of herself so that she could retire, it was clear in that regard just how little she actually cared for even her own family, the very people that, if nothing else, she should have cared for. And it was already clear as day that she cared nothing for those she viewed as being beneath her. But what places her as an Orange Lantern is not what she does when she's winning. Though, admittedly cursing the multiversal orb to allow the Archons to become power batteries for her definitely boosts her qualifications. Instead, it's what she's willing to do once it all begins to fall apart. I can't think of any better example of her cowardice than the final battle for M308 in Mythal Lethal Season 1. After being goaded to fight without the multiversal orb, an even match between her and Mythal, Tarsa quickly found herself on the losing end to a significantly more powerful and skilled fighter. Fearing for her life and losing control, she went back on her word and summoned the orb to her hand, using it to quickly overpower Mythal. proving just how much of a coward she was. Horus called her out on this too, to which Tarsa stated that once she wiped them out, there would be no one left to remember such a slight on her honor. In a final act of desperation, Horus sacrificed himself and used the power of the Archons to dispel the orb, which he ended up dying a second time in the process. And when Mythil was just about to slay Tarsa, she made one final desperate plea to maintain her life. Tarsa would turn her powers over to Horus, as they would be the only thing that would allow him to survive a fatal blow from Trishula, and she moved on to another universe. It became apparent, however, that she would only continue to aim for the power of Overseers, for centuries, in fact. Not only this, but we also have to remember the deceit she used against the Archons themselves to even claim the position as the God Overseer of M308 in the first place. She implanted the idea of physical forms in their consciousness and convinced them to merge several universes of Pantheon-based worlds into one, putting her as the God Overseer of them all. She was already the Overseer of Dimension Z-0009, and she abandoned that dimension, which later would be taken over by Eloise Lim, for even more power when the potential arose. Sterling even states that, as opposed to killing her, they decided to trap her in A016's version of Hell, the uninhabited pocket dimension with no one to control, a more fitting punishment for her than the release of death for everything she had done. Tarsa is driven by her greed and power for control. But so far, she has only done it on the scale of singular worlds. Now, with the new Imperium Pantheon at her side, she is aiming to control the entirety of the Eldraine multiverse as a whole. Imagine her with an orange ring, an additional sum of power added to those she stole from Cypheramov, and a significant boost to her already cold, manipulative personality. It may also increase her desperation and paranoia, but that might be the Shark Gang's only hope of defeating her. That being, learning how to exploit it, if she ever did claim an orange ring for herself. Tarsa was already a multiverse-level threat. The power of the ring would only drastically increase her standing on that scale. To put it simply, she would be nigh unstoppable. And she wouldn't stop, not until the entire Eldraine multiverse kneeled at her feet, or was burned into nothingness for refusing to submit. And that just about wraps us up for this first episode of PopCross Studios Lanterns. Of the three designs, I think Clayton is my favorite, though Tarsa comes in at a close second. Making her face was by far the hardest thing to pull off. I had several attempts at it. But I think the unsettling look is fitting for an Orange Lantern, especially one of her caliber. But getting to a spot I was comfortable with did definitely take a lot of effort. I actually did Clayton second after Roku, and while I am quite proud of how I pulled off the latter, I found myself actually preferring the way I chose to handle Clayton, where I made a background that complements his character as opposed to using his color and symbol. From there, I merged it with a more PopCross Studios inspired background, and am quite happy with how it looks. Hence why I repeated the style for Tarsa, and I don't regret it in the slightest. I also realized this later on after I had made the drawing that I never actually put Roku's Orange Lantern ring in there in the first place. And then I went back later to add one in. You probably noticed that in the playback. But I realized I actually kind of prefer the look of him not having it on his visible hand, so I just decided against adding it in. And so, just picture it behind the QCRX head that he's holding. All that being said, what's next? Well, for me, for this channel, that remains to be seen. Likely there's a lot of crossover videos, seeing as my Sonic Racing Crossroads backlog is incredibly massive, at least at the time of recording this anyways. But for all I know, you could be seeing episode 2 of the series come out much sooner than it takes for me to get to them. Also, I'm working on a magazine. I plan on releasing a short video about it once I'm finished, as it serves as a sort of tie-in with a lot of what I do on the channel, art, gaming, storytelling, and tabletop stuff. There's an original story in there, plus a custom 5th edition compatible class that I made for last fall, all for Halloween, and that will be releasing publicly for the very first time. I've been sitting on it for about a year now. And that's just the big things. There's other cool stuff to be found in there too that I look forward to sharing. If any of that interests you, you should totally consider subscribing. I'd love for you to be there when it comes out and when I drop more art content like this one. And with all that being said, I want to thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. Seriously, it means a lot to me, especially with a passion project like this one. I look forward to making more art for this series in the future. Next time we'll have 3 Yellow Lanterns to add to the series. I haven't gotten started on them yet, but I look forward to seeing how those pieces will turn out. I won't spoil my other 2 picks, but yes, Psycho is one of them, and I am very much excited for his to come together. Before I go, well, might I ask you to consider leaving a comment as well, whether it be a prediction about what characters I'll be turning into Lanterns next, or a suggestion for a second Red Lantern, or maybe just your thoughts on the art for this episode, or even just saying hello. I seriously appreciate it, and I plan on reading as many comments as I can. Also, it helps get my videos spread around here on YouTube, so that other people might get to see some of the things I do here. Aside from that, I have been Art Ninja 2706. Thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace out. Tarsus Creed is similarly non-traditional, but far more exotic. Not exotic. Why did I say exotic? It's not exotic. My god. Well, I guess I have a blooper for this video now.